so you did that for like 9 years, but the DEA stuff, was that just the one case with all the Puerto Ricans, or did you work on further things after that?
What happened was, after that case, we wrapped it up. We did the clerical and everything that had to go along with it. The interviews, the grand juries, all that bullshit. But then eventually, my chief, they kept me and my partner up there in the DEA, Drug Enforcement. And my chief asked me, he actually asked me twice, kind of for the same favor twice. The first one, I believe, was Coney Island. When my chief was a regular captain, he had the command in Coney Island. And there were these guys in Coney Island that used to just mess with him, like salute him and give him the finger. And every time he drove by, and they were bad guys. They were, one guy had shot at an undercover. And they were known, like, I had known them when I had known the name when I was there as a rookie in uniform. And they were like a whole family. And he said, Mike, if you could do anything, try to do me a favor. Would you go get those, and he told me the names, and I recognized the names. So I went and I got their BCI photo, their picture, their mugshots. And I just started hanging around on Coney Island. I didn't even tell the agents because I couldn't have agents surveilling me.
So you're undercover.
Yeah, right. So now I got a DEA undercover car, and I would wear like regular clothes, T-shirts, tank tops, so they knew I didn't carry a gun, so they knew I wasn't a cop, or they would assume I wasn't a cop. And I would just keep letting these bad guys see me on Mermaid Avenue, on Stillwell Avenue, wherever, Surf Avenue rather. And then one day, one of the guys was getting gas, one of the main targets. And I pulled up next to him to get gas, and he had a Mercedes at the time, a nice Mercedes. And there were no leased cars back then, so if you had a nice car, that means you bought it. And he had a nice car, and I get out and start talking to him. And he saw, I kind of introduced myself. And then eventually, I'm sure he remembered me, and I meet a female from the project. And I tell her this, I'm looking to cop heavyweight. And she says, oh, well, I know a guy. And that's the guy she introduces me to. And I end up buying away from him and his brother and basically the whole Coney Island crew. We eventually took down 17 pretty big guys from Coney Island.
When you bought it, was it one of those where they all descended immediately upon the handoff? Or
No. It was a long-term case.
Got it.
Yeah, it was like an 8-month case. Yeah, we did a wiretap on one of them guys too. And we did a good case actually.
But your chief in the NYPD asked for this, but you were acting as a DEA agent.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, he assigned us there. He was the chief that got us up there, who said, go ahead, go. And then the DEA didn't care. In other words, they were happy to have a case going. It was a good case. One of their agents got officially assigned to the case on their end. After I made the introduction, when I was ready to buy, I took the agents with me, of course. They did surveillance and, but that took quite a few weeks or months until I got friendly with these guys, that I let surveillance come into the case. Because again, I couldn't be seen with bad enough. I'm a white guy from Brooklyn that they didn't trust. And now they're going to see maybe 7 or 8 unmarked cars or plainclothes, undercover cars, or white guys in cars. It would have never worked.
Yeah.
So
here's the other thing though. Like, it sounds like you didn't have any formal undercover training. You just went into this.
Right. I didn't actually.
That's ballsy.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was. Listen, I was a young guy. I had no family to worry about, no wife, no kids. I just worried about myself, and I was able to take care of myself for the most part.
But it's like a hard job though, too. Like, it's acting and you're never off. And you have to be around, in wild situations and convince people. Yeah. Like, it's a crazy, whenever I talk with people who've done undercover work, I'm like, whoa. And it seems like you're just like, okay, another day at the office.
The thing about it is
If you are looking to search the web privately and not have all these websites track you when you leave, check out my friends over at Privado VPN. Privado is the VPN company that gives you full privacy while giving you absolutely no loss in speed whatsoever. It's a beautifully fast-working, pumping VPN. We love that. And you are allowed to use it on up to 10 different devices at a time. So happy hunting across every single electronic device you own. If you use the link in my description, you will see my landing page with the site, and there's a plan there for $4.99 a month. It is the same one I use. You're going to love it, so check it out, and it supports the show.
I hung around with bad kids as a little kid, bad guys. I know what bad guys are thinking. You know, of course, not always, but you hang around enough knuckleheads, you know what a guy's thinking. I knew if I could work the greed factor in and make them feel like they were going to make money off me, it would work. And what happened in this case was kind of interesting. The female who I initially meet, she says, I think I know somebody that you would like to meet. And she calls up she beeps some guy. He meets me at a diner. He's an Italian guy that was in an accident. And he was a quadriplegic or paraplegic. He had he had a special vehicle because he couldn't use his legs. I think he could only use one of his arms. Anyway, he had gotten into an accident with a car that was delivering Cadillacs. You know, when you see all those
like
cars?
one of the big, yeah.
And part of the deal was...
And he lived?
Yeah.
Wow.
And part of the deal was he gets a brand new Cadillac every year. Believe it or not, that was the deal he told me.
That's like the Bobby Bonilla contract.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Right. So she introduces me to this guy, he meets me.
Italian guy, you said?
Yeah. He was a little older than me at the time. And he tells me, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing with this? And really, which I didn't know at the time, but she was a prostitute for him. That's how she knew him. She was a hooker that he would pay. He says, what are you doing? I said, yeah, I'm looking to cop some crack, maybe some dope, some weight. He says, all right, I'll get you guys. Now, they all knew him, and he was a drug user. So they all knew he was a messed up guy. Like he calls them, and again, they see me, and he vouched for me, which he shouldn't. Of course, he shouldn't have. He didn't know me from a hole in the wall, other than I was an Italian guy from Brooklyn. He was Italian. He was actually mobbed up a little bit. His family was. And he vouched for me. And once he vouched for me, I was actually in pretty good shape.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
You know, once you're like in, and that's what they all say. They're like, once you're in, then it gets easier. I guess, I don't know, maybe I overthink it because I'm still thinking like every time someone says something where it's like, ooh, there's a code word. You know, you're processing in your head and you're like, okay, well, how do I get them from there to there? And I'm just picturing my overthinking ass in that situation, just like, I'd probably be wearing it on my face. Just like, oh yeah, no, yeah, let's do that.
Well, you know what, in this case, it's kind of interesting. I was actually meeting them on Stillwell Avenue at a diner to do a deal. And
is this down Coney Island?
Yeah, Coney Island, yeah. Coney Island. And a guy from my neighborhood, a very connected guy from my neighborhood, he was my sister's age, which is 2 years older than me, used to come to my house, swim in my swimming pool, played football, was a linebacker. I knew him really well. We were really friendly. And like I said, he was a connected guy. He was doing all kinds of construction projects. He knew Sammy the Bull, knew all these guys. He pulls up. He had a Rolls Royce at the time. And I'm in the diner with these black guys hanging out outside, and he pulls up in his Rolls Royce. And I swear I must have shit when I saw him, because the first thing I figured he's gonna say is, "Hey Mike, what's up? How's everything? How's the job?" So I see him, and he comes out of the car. He sees me. He gives me a big hug and a kiss, like a mob kiss and hug. Goes into the diner. He don't say a word. He comes out. Says goodbye.
Did they see that?
They saw it, and they were like amazed. They made him for a mobster just by his looks.
So what'd they say to you? They're like, oh,
they didn't say anything, but they just assumed from that little interaction that I'm who I say I am.
Wow.
And it worked. So I see him years later. I put that story in my book. I see him years later at a wake, and he says to me, "Page 84, right?" I said, that's right, because I changed his name in the book. He said, cool. I remember.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, he knew I was doing work. you know, and he was sharp enough not to give it up, basically.
There's an understanding there.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
But you didn't just do drug stuff, right? You got into other things, no?
Yeah, well, later on, I got into some other pretty cool stuff.
Like how later on? Like how many years were you just doing drug work?
So I did, I did the plainclothes on the Avenue. Then we went in DEA probably like 1988.
And that was like a few years kind of deal?
Yeah, and I think I got out of there about 91, say 91, 92.
And then what happened?
Then I went into the detective bureau as a regular detective sergeant. And then for a short time, I ended up in missing person squad, which was part of special investigations.
Now, here's a good question. How do they decide, like, because you have to get someone who becomes good at that had to get started there at some point. Like, how they decide to put you in that? Obviously, like, you're a talented cop, but, like, you'd worked in drugs. So are they saying, oh, because he was a plainclothes guy who had to make friends with everyone in the community? Like, are they doing any of that tie together?
No. And actually, missing persons isn't like a prestigious unit.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's part of special investigations, which is a prestigious division. Missing persons, it's like a stepping stone for a lot of bosses, for sergeants, which was what I was. And then from there, you go to better units or other units. But in general, the thing about missing persons, people don't really, which I never got, and I was a cop and I still never understood it. Most missing persons or missing people come back. So there's not like there's not like thousands of cases of really intense cases of where these people went. They were like runaways, separated parents. The father takes the kid from the mother, and they come back. If they're runaways, they come home. Custodial disputes, they settle them. Like so, there's not that many hard pressing cases in missing person.
Is that your operating MO when you hear about? So when you hear one come in, are you thinking like, okay, it's probably a runaway?
Yeah, well, as a boss, I would get it after the detective got it, and then he'd bring it. If it was something heavy, a detective would say, "Oh, this is bad," but for the most part, they're not bad. There's nothing going on. It's very rarely like so high profile would be if a lot of times there's a family member who's a politician and his kid went missing, like legitimately, maybe ran away or got involved with drugs and took off or something like that. Then it becomes a big deal because he's a politician or he donates to politics, that kind of thing. But in general, and then you have some high profile cases like Etan Patz, who was the first missing kid on the milk container. What
happened there?
So that was like 1979. The mother's looking out the window in Soho. For the first time, she's letting her kid go to school by himself, take the school bus by himself. And she's looking out the window and she turns her head, according to basically all accounts, for like a minute, maybe to attend to one of her other kids. I don't remember. And when she turns back, the kid is gone. And he's never seen again.
And the bus hadn't come.
Yeah, and the bus hadn't come and he never went to school that day. And so like a case like that.
What was his name?
Etan Patz.
Etan Patz. Okay. So that was before your time, though.
That was before my time, but the case I got involved with, it had to do with Etan Patz and Son of Sam and a bunch of other stuff.
Okay.
That's the case from the missing person case.
All right, so explain this one. How'd that happen?
Okay, so when I was in missing person, I got to work a couple of good cases. That was one of them, Son of Sam, and the other one was a guy named Andre Rand, they did a documentary about him called The Cropsy. He was like a child serial killer from Staten Island. But this particular case, and that kind of ties into this a little bit because they think Andre Rand was involved with the Satanic cult that these people were involved with. But I don't think he was. I never found evidence that he was.
All right, we'll come back to that. Okay.
Yeah. So when I'm in missing persons, I get a call from an inmate at Attica. And he tells me...
Attica!
Yeah.
Attica!
And it's bad up there.
Yeah.
In fact, I went with a detective, and he had a camera. And he said, I'm going to take a picture of this place. And all of a sudden we hear, like from a booming micro speaker, drop your effing camera. So we're like, what? So he throws the camera. Yeah, apparently you're not allowed to take pictures of Attica from the parking lot.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Nothing to hide there, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, he was up in the tower with a rifle. So I get a call from this inmate at Attica, and he tells me that now this is in like 1997, let's say. The kid disappeared in 1979. Etan Patz.
Oh, so you get a call from an inmate in Attica about Etan. Got
Right.
it. So this is years later.
Years later. And he tells me he's got information about Etan Patz, but he screws the name all up, which...
He also wants something, obviously.
Yeah, he's going up for parole soon, and he wants to get paroled. But the fact that he screwed the name up kind of raised my antenna a little bit, because I figured at the time, I thought, internet wasn't big then, if it was even existed. And when he screwed the name up, I figured if he was lying to me, he would have his information straight. He would have the kid's name exact. He would have everything straight. And he didn't. He had the name wrong, but close enough, but wrong. Anyway, we go up there. I bring a detective with me. We go up to Attica. And let me go back a little bit. So he's in jail for sodomizing his infant daughter, this guy.
The guy who called you.
Yes. And he's also a 1% biker, vice president of a biker gang.
What?
The name of the gang is called the Rat Pack. And they were under, I think, the Hells Angels, maybe the Mongols. I don't remember.
He sodomized his infant daughter.
Yeah. He had 2 kids, and I think he did both, but the infant daughter for sure. I don't remember if the other kid was a boy or a girl. And he did it with the wife, and the wife, I think, testified against him. So they gave her some kind of deal.
That guy wasn't in jail for life?
No, he was coming out. He was coming out. Oh, he was coming out on parole, if he made parole.
Okay.
Yeah. And we actually saw pictures of some of the stuff he was doing was horrendous. Obviously, right? But in any event, so he's got this information that he's been holding in, according to him. So he's this big 350-pound biker guy. The COs are like, man, he's be careful. You want us to stay with you in the room. It's a little room, small room. He wants to stay with you. He's got he's a violent guy. And we're not going to let him because he may not talk in front of them. And he certainly doesn't want other people knowing he's giving information up.
Yeah.
So, of course not. But in any event, what he tells us is that him and his biker gang were contracted to do securing these locations in Yonkers and Westchester, these mansions. And in these mansions, there was satanic stuff going on, rituals, drugs, all kinds of drugs, all kinds of crazy sex, and satanic rituals.
What is it? All right. When people say satanic rituals, I've never Googled this. So, like, what are they doing?
Well, I'm sure they do different things on different nights. Maybe they're just worshiping statues of Satan and other crap like that. But
hey, whatever gets you off, man.
Yeah. Well,
Fuck.
and I always say that I think it was a big part of it was the sex and drug stuff.
Okay.
Just to get, that's how it appeared anyway to me. That's my belief. But yeah, so so the idea was that they were contracted to secure the premises, to make sure cops didn't come in and civilians that weren't invited, basically, to these rituals or parties or whatever you want to call them. And eventually he's done so many that they get to know him and they get to know the president of the gang, the biker gang. And they wore their colors to scare any, pain in the asses away. And,
right.
And so now they have like free reign of these parties. They walk in and out, him and the president. And at some point, they walk in and they're doing a ritual, satanic ritual, and it has to do with this kid Etan. They call, now this is according to him, his name was John Lentini. He's since died.
This is the guy who called you with the
inmate.
info.
Yeah, Tiny was his nickname.
Got it.
So Tiny becomes friends with these guys. He walks into the ritual, and he says there's an altar, and they call up the kid by name. They do some kind of satanic prayers. They measure him with some kind of rope, and then they're going to sacrifice him. And he says he leaves before they sacrifice him, and his the other guy leaves also, the other biker, but he says they sacrificed the kid. But he says he doesn't see it.
So this is years ago.
This was, years ago.
So he was saying that the literal live Etan was in there.
Right.
And they, wow.
Right.
Okay. But that's obviously not what ended up being true.
Well, why do you say that? Because they made an arrest?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, I say it all the time. I'm not going, I can only give my opinion. I don't know. I didn't take any action in that Hernandez case. That's the guy who they arrested for Etan Patz.
Yeah. Not long ago.
Not that, a few years ago.
Yeah.
The first jury was a hung jury, I think. And then they convicted him on the second trial.
Yeah. He got arrested in like 2012 or something. And then convicted in like 2017 or something like that.
Right, something like that, right.
Okay. So
now, he had a history of mental problems.
Yeah, he was also like, I think he was legally mentally retarded or something like that. So let's back up then.
Right.
So this guy tells you that they sacrificed a kid in a house in Westchester.
Right.
So then what happens?
Okay. So this guy Tiny was a bright guy. Just I hate to say that because people always say this mass murder. Not that he was a mass murderer, but these guys are intelligent. But he really was. He was talking about stuff back then that he was giving like way too much information. Like we had to keep honing him back into the story. And again, there was no internet. And even if there was, Attica inmates don't have access to the internet.
Right.
Right. Like he was, just to give you an example, he was talking about, and we met I think once maybe twice, but we had several conversations because he kept calling, trying to get out. What's going on? Yeah, I mean, he talked about the Bilderberg group back in '97. He talked about that where Alex Jones went, that Grove.
the fucking out in California.
Yeah.
I went out to the Grove.
Yeah, I can never remember the name.
They were worshiping an owl and fucking each other.
Yeah. But you know what? This guy was talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, so he had a lot of information. He was.
Where was he getting it? So he got the one information from guarding the house, but what about the other stuff? Was that all from the same shit?
Yeah, from the same group, from the supposed cult.
Bohemian Grove. That's what it's called.
Yeah. I can remember that.
I forget that first word all the time.
Me too, all the time.
So he had gotten all this years ago, had sat on it, and now he's telling you all this.
Well, the homicide happened years ago, and actually he had done security for them even prior to the kid being taken. He had started security for them in like 76, 77. Actually crossed paths with Son of Sam, with David Berkowitz, according to him.
Can you tell people real fast who David Berkowitz was, for those who don't know?
So David Berkowitz was nicknamed or called the Son of Sam, or the 44 caliber killer. And he was a serial killer. Well, if you believe the narrative or the arrest, that he worked alone and he killed, I think, 6 people and shot like 8 people. And he did a lot of shootings were Lover's Lane type shootings, male and female. Although he did 2 females at once and 1 female by herself. But and that was from 1976, and he gets arrested July of 76 to August 77.
Yeah, it was like a big scare in New York City.
Yeah, and women were changing the color of their hair because they thought he was targeting females with long black hair. So they were changing their hair color, keeping their hair up in, like a bun, so he couldn't.
Maybe I'm remembering this wrong. Isn't he now one, because he's like reformed in prison or whatever, but isn't he one of the people saying he didn't act alone?
Well, what happened was when he got caught, he said that his neighbor's dog told him to do it.
Right.
And the neighbor was Sam Carr, and the dog, so that's why he got the Son of Sam.
Right.
But and he said the dog told him to do it. That's what he said initially. And then a few years later, he said that's not really what happened. He said, I was part of this cult, the Satanic cult, and we did this together. Other people were involved. There were other shooters, people that drove. He admitted to doing a couple of them, but he said there were other people involved.
I don't remember. Was he from Wealth? Or was he? Yeah, he was kind of
like a loner,
working class.
Yeah, he was in the army for a little while, and I think he was a postman actually when they arrested him.
So how has he said how he got allegedly caught up with that cult?
Yeah, well, from Yonkers. He said he was from Yonkers, and that's where there were individuals involved with it there, and he just got involved with the wrong crowd who were using drugs and involved with Satan and all that crap, and that's why he got involved.
Okay, so that's like a whole nother narrative there. But then, why did we bring up the Son of Sam again?
Because Tiny crossed paths with him.
Oh, he crossed paths with him directly.
Right.
But this guy, he wasn't going in the rich neighborhoods though, because Tiny was doing security for serious people.
Yeah, but they also met in Yonkers in different locations, regular house parties in the park in Untermeyer Park, where they supposedly met, where his cult supposedly met on occasion. So they supposedly sacrificed this kid, and Tiny had information on it.
He saw it.
Well, he doesn't see the actual sacrifice. He says he left at the time, which perps always say that. They don't really put themselves in the mix. So,
which doesn't mean they're lying, but it could be lying about themselves where they're at, because they always say, "Well, I left before that happened, but it happened." Somehow they knew it happened.
Right.
Did he say so how they did it, or
no? I think it was. I think they sacrificed him with like a stabbing situation. Yeah. So he had all this information, but we needed to verify it because basically he's telling us a story, and he gave us a lot of information. And he gave us some names. A lot of the names were old nicknames that didn't really help us. He gave us some names of people that were dead for years, but he gave us some things that were really credible, that really panned out.
Like what?
One of the things he had said, that one of the other biker gang members gets involved with the cult also, and he does a Son of Sam like killing or shooting. I don't remember if the people died or they just got shot over in Cypress Hills, and the victims were black. The shooter was black. The biker guy was a black guy. And he said it was never attributed to Son of Sam because the victims were black, as opposed to all the other ones that were white.
And like the women and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So it didn't get... So, so he gives us that, and he gives us something, and I'll tell you how we check that out. And then he says, all right, I'll tell you about another sacrifice. He said, and maybe you'll find it. So he tells us there was a female that were hanging out with him, the president of the gang, and a couple of the other satanic people, in Forest Hills Park in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the whole district changed regarding the precincts. Everything changed. In other words, it's not the, 104th precinct anymore. So the paperwork was going to be really hard to find. But in any event, he says, I don't remember the exact year. He says, but it was cold, snow on the ground. The woman had a tattoo on her back of her son, or a man's name, I forgot. I think it turned out to be her son's name. And we told her we were just going to use her for a bloodletting, like a ceremony. Take some blood, cut her a little bit and take some blood. And she was into it, the girl. And we laid her on one of those cement tables, like the way they play checkers or chess on.
Yeah.
They lay her on the table, and they take this heavy sword, like from the Renaissance age, this kind of looking sword. And when she thinks she's going to be blessed with it, the president of the gang, of the biker gang, actually crashes it down on her chest. He says, if you could find that case, that'll prove that there's another, this sacrifice did happen. So it took us a long time. I had some civilian in one police plaza that was really, a hard worker. He found the case. And sure as hell, they find there was a DOA female found in the snow with a tattoo of a man's name on I think the son's name.
Shit.
And the best part is the first or only person that the detectives talked to was the president of the biker gang. And he basically said, yeah, I know her. I haven't seen her, but he was one of the only people that the detectives talked to.
And he knew what had happened to her.
He was the one that did it, according to Tiny.
So they got it. Okay. I thought I might have heard that wrong, but I did hear that right. The biker gang themselves ended up getting involved with the cult itself,
Right.
And they weren't just protecting it anymore; they were like in it.
Well, not all the bikers.
Some of them.
Some of them.
And the president of the gang was a guy who was in on it.
Yeah.
So even when they were up in Westchester and stuff, he was actually, in addition to security, he's like in there.
Right.
Got it.
Right. He didn't do the kid. He didn't have anything to do with the kid. He was just watching at that point. And then later he becomes like a high priest, him and Tiny.
A high priest. Oh.
Yeah, they become like high.
Oh, so Tiny got really deep too.
Yeah, Tiny gets really deep. Yeah.
Is that really perhaps why he later committed said crime on infant?
Well, he was in for his daughter. That's the case he was in on.
Yes,
yeah, right,
yes.
Well, right. Well, because the whole thing is like their whole MO basically is crazy sex and sex with kids and minors.
What the fuck?
So he fit right in. He fit right in.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, did he become that because he was there, or was he already doing that shit?
I'm assuming he was probably already doing that, and that just was something that he found like-minded people.
I'm really glad I can't relate to this, but like, what makes you want to do that if it's not driven by a cult where you are literally, you lose your fucking mind? I guess then it's possible. But like, if he was already doing that before, like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, he later on when he finally makes parole, not because of us. But anyway, years later, he marries another female.
Oh God!
Right, and her first husband was a pedophile, arrested for pedophilia. Then she marries this guy.
Oh, she's got a type.
Yeah, that's what I said. She's got a type. And when she got pregnant by him, the state of Pennsylvania took the kid away from her just because of who she was, the idiots that she was married to.
I actually don't feel bad for her because she knowingly married him.
Yeah, well, like you said, her first husband was a pedophile, and then she married this guy.
Sick fuck.
She had kids taken away from her prior.
Good. You know what? In that case, good.
Yeah.
So he gives you this case where he is able to review, describe the tattoo perfectly, the individual, the approximate time, the way she was killed,
right,
and everything. And was there a way that you guys were able to check it to see if he was just taking something else where the killing happened, blunt force trauma was something to the chest?
Yeah, well, we found the ME report said that's exactly what she was killed from. Not from the sharpness of a blade, but the breaking of the sternum and the ribs and everything else. Just like he said, because he told us the knife wasn't a sharp knife, or the sword wasn't sharp. In fact, it was heavy and dull.
So here's my question. Did you check out to see if they had just killed her for something else and like killed her in a bar fight? Something stupid.
No, because the president of biker gang had long been dead. And if the original detectives had no one else to talk, there was no one else to talk to basically, because they had no one on the complaint report basically, other than the biker guy, and he's dead. So. Could they have killed her that way for another reason? Yeah, I'm sure they could have.
Yeah, that would be my question there.
But he gave us another one. He gave us another one. So,
is this all from one meeting?
One meeting and a couple of phone calls. Yeah, because like I said, he wanted to get out. He didn't want parole to not let him out. So the second one is the black biker guy, his part, another 1%er. He did that shooting, and he was in jail at the time. Actually, he was in jail on another sexual crime. That guy was the black biker, but that's besides the point. Anyway, he says, go talk to this guy. He'll give up. Maybe he'll give up the Cypress Hill shootings and the Son of Sam type shootings they were, and the cult, and he knows about Etan, and he wasn't there, but he knows about it.
So just to review, your guy is telling you to go talk to this other guy.
Who's also an inmate somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
Sing Sing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The best You're hitting the best prisons.
Yeah. They only go to the best places.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I said, well, there's no incentive for this guy to talk to me. Why would he give up a shooting that he did? He says, there is. He says he gets in a fight in Brooklyn, East New York, Brownsville. I don't remember where. He remembered. I don't remember. He says he gets in a fight in Brooklyn over a basketball game. He goes to his car. He takes out a gun. He shoots this guy in front of a whole park full of people playing basketball and watching this particular game. Never gets arrested for it. Nobody questioned him about it. The guy dies. No one. Everybody was afraid of him. Nobody said anything.
They get rid of the body, or
I don't think so. I think he just shoots the guy and leaves.
Okay.
Because he was a scary guy.
So no witnesses.
A park full of witnesses, but nobody came
Yeah,
forward.
that's my point.
Right.
Like, they're not talking.
Right,
Yeah.
nobody's talking.
Yeah.
He says if you could get him, to confess to maybe you got something with this that could help. So what I do is I take a manila folder, I put yellow pages in it, I write some information on the folder, and I go up there, that Sing Sing, and I throw the folder on the desk. I say, you see that? I said, that's the case. And I found I found the shooting incident, the actual DOA in the park, shooting victim in the park. Mm-hmm. So I knew when it was, what year, what day, and all that stuff. I said, this case is your victim that you shot. These are witnesses. You're going to go to jail for that homicide in the park. As soon as you get out of here, you're not going home from here. We're locking you up for this homicide. So he was shocked because he thought he was, that was the least of his worries. All these years later, he thought he was in good shape.
But you didn't really have anything.
I had
in
nothing. No, nothing. So
Smooth. Right.
Yeah. So he says, how do I get out of that? How do I get away from this? I said, well, tell me about that shooting in Cyprus, the Son of Sam shooting. Tell us about the cult. Tell us about the shooting.
And this was the black biker.
Yeah. And he does. He gives up the shooting, and to a black guy and black girl were making out. He gets out of his car. He shoots them, gets in his car, and he leaves. He writes out a full statement.
Confessing.
Confesses to that, and he confesses to the shooting in the park.
How does this happen? Like, how do you, like, I've heard a lot about the psychology of, like, the whole rapport building, which has also been used for bad, by the way, obviously, to get people to confess to things they didn't do. But, like, you have somebody in a room, you have them in there for 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it is, in a prison. How do you start with, I have this case against you, no, don't, fuck, how do I get out of this? To eventually working all the way around to get another case, and then get him to even confess on that and feel good about it.
Well, I mean, his incentive was to get out of jail. It wasn't that hard.
But now you're taking him to trial for 2 homicides.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, how does this happen?
Yeah. Well, you're allowed to lie. But yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
So he gives up. So now you have 2 that were described perfectly.
Right.
And you are buying the whole satanic thing. Had you gone back, and because you weren't involved in the case because it was before you, but had you gone back and pulled the Son of Sam files?
I don't think maybe not. I don't remember. Maybe some. I mean, the files are thousands of files.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So I don't think we took many of them.
Did you go talk to him?
Well, what happens is, just to backtrack just a little bit.
Sure.
So Tiny's gang was in Brooklyn and Manhattan. The bike, they had clubhouses. Borderline Brooklyn, Queens, Bushwick. I don't know if you're familiar with Bushwick or Ridgewood, actually.
Yes.
It's borderline Brooklyn and Queens. So I'm only pointing this out because it kind of goes to show that he was giving me information that was honest at a lot of points. Tiny, maybe not everything, but so at some point I asked him about his guns, and he said, "Oh, I always used to carry." I forgot what it was. Nothing. I don't think it's anything heavy. Maybe like a 25. And I asked him, "Where'd you get that 25?" And he says, I used to buy my guns off this guy Harry in Ridgewood. And I asked him to describe Harry. So he says, yeah, Harry's a big, muscular Puerto Rican guy, older. He goes through the whole thing. So I grew up in Canarsie, Brooklyn, which is probably 45 minutes from Ridgewood. But I used to train in a gym on St. Nicholas Avenue and Myrtle, which is considered Ridgewood, is Ridgewood, Queens. And Queens is considered Brooklyn and Queens, whatever. But so there was a boxing gym downstairs, and upstairs was a weightlifting gym. And most of the gym was Spanish and black. And I said, Harry, and I said, to myself, I think I know who Harry is. So I go to my old gym. I hadn't been there in years at this point. In fact, the gym had moved, not too far, but it moved from where its original location. I go there one day. Don't you know Harry's there working out? And he sees me and he hugs me because I hadn't seen him in many years since I've been there.
You're like, I'm not here for that.
Yeah. So I asked him. I said, Harry, let me ask you something. You remember a guy named Tiny? He said, yeah. And he knew I was a cop. Harry knew it. At this point, I think he knew I was a cop. I was young when I went there. I went there from like the time I was 17 to like my early 20s. I said, do you ever sell tiny guns? And he said, yeah, I sold him quite a few guns.
Huh.
I said, okay. So
turn around. Throw the cuffs
put your hands behind your back.
All right. So what happens next for real?
All right. So anyway, confirmed a couple of things with Tiny. So now we have enough, at least I figure, where we could go talk to Berkowitz.
Son of
Sam. And see, well, he gives us other stuff that we kind of verify, a lot of stuff we couldn't. He gave us a location way up in upstate New York that there might be dead bodies and buried in the ground. And the father let us check the grounds. And then when we were going to get the ground penetrating radar, this particular guy's father said, no, that I'm not going to let you do. I'm not going to let you dig my yard. But anyway, he gave us the fact that he gave us this location and it turned out to be a legit location. Anyway, now we're going to go talk to Berkowitz and see if we get him to give up some of his names that he was going to give up. He had at some point decided to tell the truth, that he was involved with a cult.
I think it was after everything too, right?
Well, yeah. First he said the dog nonsense.
Yeah.
Then a couple of years later, he's going to give it up. They grab him, meaning inmates grab him and slice him up, and they just miss his jugular vein. And when that happened, he said, I'm never going to talk again. I got family on the outside. He got spooked. If their intention was to keep him from talking, it worked. But anyway, we made a appointment to go see him, and the bosses on the PD told me not to go. I made appointments again, kind of on the QT, and they found out and they told me again not to go. And basically that's where the case died.
Wow. Okay. That's sketchy.
Crazy, right?
That's very sketchy. That has me asking some questions.
I always used to say that I've heard police personnel in the past, whether it's federal or local, say that the case was shut down, and I always said to myself, "That's bullshit. Cases don't get shut down."
Yeah.
My case got shut down
because you didn't go see him.
Well, because they won't let us go see him, and they told us to stop working on the case, basically.
Oh, they told you to stop working on this altogether.
Right.
That's scary. See, like, there's a thing, and it's sad that the world works this way, but if I look at this unbiased for a second, and let's assume everyone is an okay actor. None of them are evil or whatever. But, like, you start with a huge case like that, like Son of Sam, and then you have some other huge case with Etan Patz, right?
Right.
And so Son of Sam gets solved,
right,
quote unquote. You at least have someone who you know was involved, and congratulations, you can walk the streets again in New York. We did our job. Etan doesn't get solved, and then it kind of floats away, and it's like, okay, well, we fucked that one up, so let's just kind of forget about that. And there becomes this human thing where if a case gets out of control, like the facts you find, like stuff you did, is inconvenient, meaning it's not just like, oh, he was bludgeoned to death by a homeless guy on the corner or something. It involves like a lot of people, money, power. It can get to a point where it's like, are we all going to lose our jobs if we now tell the truth that we found out what happened because we did our jobs to find out what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
There's a weird psychology to it that I don't want to say I understand, but like, I don't envy the people who are in that position. Right. But it doesn't make the result of, maybe in the case of like shutting down cases, it doesn't make that right.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Of
like
course.
That's still wrong. It's just like you have been handed a lose-lose.
Right.
You bring it out, heads are going to roll. You don't bring it out, heads might roll. Or at the very least, like you didn't do your job and you got to live with that. That's heavy.
Yeah, man. I mean, he had given us, like, according to Tiny, and again, you know, the information I'm giving is what I got. So you could either, some people say, yeah, it's true, and whatever, it's not true. But he gave us information regarding, like, people with a lot of money were involved. Like, the Manhattan DA's nephew was involved with the cult, and this one's, and, you know, when you hear it, you say, that's bullshit, let's go, you know. And then when you find out they cut the case out, like, well, maybe somebody heavy was involved, or people with money are involved, and, you know, people are going to get embarrassed, and, you know, they made a collar. Everybody with Berkowitz, everybody was happy. The shootings apparently, or appeared to stop. So.
Was that, as far as like your time working on the missing persons unit, was that the firework? Was that obviously like the main case of memory of note?
Well, that one and the Andre Rand, who was, they say might have been connected to this cult, but I don't believe he was.
Okay, yeah, we said we come back to that. So what was the story there?
So Andre Rand was a guy from Staten Island who, I don't know if you remember Willowbrook. Do you remember Willowbrook? Geraldo Rivera did that big expose.
No.
So Willowbrook was a state-run hospital, mental facility for mentally handicapped people.
Yeah, one of those.
But really bad. He blew the lid off of it. Like, he somehow got in with a camera, and they were naked, you know, mentally disturbed people living in feces and their own piss, and they were treated terrible, and it became a whole big thing, man. Like, you know, literally blew the lid off of what was going on in there. They were being mistreated. Wow. It was like a hellhole, and nobody apparently knew what was going on there. And somehow, like I said, Geraldo Rivera befriended somebody, and he got in. He got in with a camera, and there's video of it of Willowbrook, which is in Staten Island. Well, this guy Andre Van worked there first as a maintenance guy, and then he worked there as a physical therapist. How he became a physical therapist is beyond me, because he had no he had no qualifications. But that just goes to show what was going on there. And they weren't doing physical therapy for these people. If you see, like I said, if you ever see the video,
I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's ridiculous.
What was maybe I can also find it while you're talking about. What years are we talking here when he was doing this?
I think it was, the expose was in the mid 70s, 70 or 70, early 70s. Willowbrook, you can't miss it. It'll come right up, I'm sure.
Willowbrook Mental Hospital. Let's see. 1972.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh wow, yeah. Geraldo Rivera's been around a long time, huh?
Yeah, that's what made his career.
I didn't know anything about this. I also don't know a hell of a lot about him.
Yeah.
All right, I think this is probably going to get, if I stick it on YouTube, I'm using someone else's content, so I can't put it up. But for people that want to look it up, it's called Willowbrook, The Last Great Disgrace, Geraldo Rivera, 1972 expose. So you can check that out. It's a 27-minute documentary. Okay, so he figures out how to get in there.
Yeah, so he gets in there with a camera. But this guy, Andre Rand, worked there, like I said.
Yes.
First as a maintenance guy, then a physical therapist, whatever. And he's mentally not, I guess, I don't know how to put it gently, but not where he should be. He's slow, I guess. I don't know what terminology it was, but that's what they would have used back then, I guess. And one of the female workers goes missing, and he was like the last guy seen with her. Then this is going back to the early 80s. A little girl, he targeted children that had mental disorders for the most part.
So they were putting kids in his hospital too?
Yeah, but that ain't where he was getting these kids from. He worked there. He also lived on the grounds. It was like a 300-acre ground. The Willowbrook was on 300 acres, and he also lived on the grounds. And then they closed Willowbrook at some point, and there's all these underground tunnels and stuff, and he lived in there. And there were other homeless people that lived in those tunnels, and they connected one building to the other, and all that.
So he was living as a homeless person, working there.
Yeah, and
no one knew that.
No one knew that. No, and in the 80s, there's a missing woman that they think he may have killed in the 70s. And then at some point he steals a school bus, and he goes to like the YMCA, and he takes 11 kids on the school bus, and he takes them to Newark Airport to look at the airplane. So he basically kidnapped 11 kids. They catch him for that. They lock him. You know, I think he was planning on doing some kind of damage to them, but he couldn't figure out what to do with all these kids, and he got like overwhelmed, and they arrest him for that. I think he only does like 10 or 11 months, and then from when he comes out, a bunch of different kids go missing. Mentally handicapped
Jesus.
girl, a guy, a bunch of people go missing, and then in 1981. And then he eventually gets arrested for one of them. A girl named, I think her name was, Jesus, I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he gets arrested for one of these.
Ta-Nehisi Jackson?
Yeah, I don't think he gets arrested for her.
Ann Hughes?
Nope.
Holly Ann
That's
Hughes?
the one I worked on, actually. That's the case I'm going to tell you about.
Alice Pereira?
No, the next one, I think.
Those are the three.
Sure, something with an S.
I don't know.
Anyway, I think
see
it's in 1987 he gets arrested, I think, for her killing.
Okay, wait, hold on. There's something down here. Jennifer Schweiger?
That's it.
Okay.
Jennifer Schweiger.
Got it.
Yeah, he gets arrested for Jennifer Schweiger's killing. He's the last person they see him with. They see her with him.
And it says she was born with Down syndrome, was reported missing on July 9th, 87. Witnesses spotted Jennifer walking with Rand. Her body was found underground after a 35-day search. While combing the area around Willowbrook State School, I'm reading off Wikipedia, people.
Right.
A particular spot caught the eye of retired New York City firefighter George Kramer. He returned with the police to the entire body was unearthed from the shallow grave, and the remains were positively identified as those of Schweiger. Police searched the grounds for evidence and found one of Rand's makeshift campsites in proximity. So one of those underground things in proximity to the grave.
Right. They don't charge him with the homicide, but they charge him with her kidnapping.
How does that work?
I don't know. And he gets a bunch of years. He does some time for that. But in 81, he was seen with this girl, Holly Ann Hughes, who was 7 years old. She went to the bodega to buy soap. She didn't even have enough money for soap. She was a poor little girl.
And you're getting this in the 90s.
Yeah. What happens is while I'm a missing person, I run into a woman that I know, a girl I know, my age, give or take. I hadn't seen her in years. And I tell her I moved to Staten Island. She doesn't even know I'm a missing person. She just knows Staten Island. She's not from Staten Island. She said, I used to have a good friend from Staten Island. Her daughter went missing. I said, what's her name? And she said her daughter's name was Holly Ann Hughes. And she tells me the mother's name. I kind of knew a little bit about it, but not, I didn't really know that much about it. I said, yeah, she's like, that's my friend. Now this woman had a really tough life, my friend. Drugs and other stuff. And Holly Ann Hughes' mother, too. That's how they knew each other. She said, yeah, the little girl went missing. They never found the guy who killed him, this and that. So I took the case, and I went through it. And at this point, I was living on Staten Island. I said, this case is really interesting, and I think there's stuff to be done on it. And there was one in particular guy that the detectives questioned a few times of what he saw. And basically, all he ever said he saw was Holly Ann Hughes and Rand, but never together, the same night. Her in the store, him driving by, her out of the store, him driving by, but never together. And I just felt like this guy saw more than he said, and he just didn't want to get involved.
What made you think that?
I don't know. It kind of bugged me that they interviewed him so many times, and because I thought Rand was guilty. And I said, this guy he had to grab this girl, and this guy, by his own account, was nearby.
And at this point, he's only been charged and put in jail or put in prison, found guilty of one kidnapping.
Yes.
No murders.
Nothing to do with Holly Ann Hughes.
Okay.
And he was due to get out. This was the mid-90s.
Oh, shit.
He was on his way out. So I do some preliminary work with some of the other witnesses, and I finally catch this guy. Burns was his name. John Burns. And he don't want to get involved. He lives in Staten Island. He's an older guy. I think like a reformed drunk, alcoholic.
Right.
He don't want to really get involved. And I really go after him. Like, really go after him. Like, I'm going to lock you up if for other stuff, or whatever you're doing, if you don't just be honest with us and tell me what really happened. And basically, after sitting him down and reading him the riot act, he says, all right, I'll tell you. I saw them together. She was in his car. I saw him call her over to the car, and I see her get in the car, and I see them drive off together.
Do you think, have you ever thought, like, out of fear, he told you what you wanted to hear?
Well, there was another witness that seen Holly approach the car and not get in.
Mm.
So it made all the sense in the world that he's seen her get in the car and drive, and he had said that he saw the car driving around. So I was sure that this guy's seen it. And he finally said, I didn't want to get involved. I don't want to be known as a rat. I'm like, this isn't a bullshit.
A kid.
Yeah, it's not a bullshit drug deal. You're not ratting on,
Yeah.
you're ratting on a guy that killed other kids too. And he's getting out of jail. And he finally, I think his conscience got to him, and he's like, yeah, you're right. Let me
So
tell you
you
what I
broke
know.
open the case.
Yeah.
So, but that was one eyewitness. Did you have to, I assume you had to get other evidence to be able to?
Well, once that happened, we called the DA. Literally, like right there and then. We got him a good statement. I think we brought him down to videotape him. And then there was other corroborating witnesses, but without him, it wasn't enough. With him, and that was enough.
And then he was put on trial for that.
Yeah, but eventually I got transferred because like I said, that was kind of like a stepping stone for me. And excuse me, the boss didn't want me to leave at this point. The lieutenant, he's like, "You got to stay with this case." I'm like, "It's almost done. You don't need me for this case anymore. It's done."
And they ended up getting all these other cases though too with it, right? So like Alice
Well,
Pereira.
he was always he didn't get charged with any of those, but those are cases that he was always suspected of doing.
Oh, okay. So that's why it says alleged, right?
Yeah. But again,
but he did get charged with Holly and found guilty.
Yes.
For killing her.
Yeah. Well, for kidnapping, they didn't charge him with the killing.
Again?
Yeah.
Did he ever get out of jail?
No, he's in. He won't get out. He's going to die in jail.
For kidnapping only.
Yeah.
He never got charged with a homicide.
No.
Yeah, it says convicted. There it goes. Convicted kidnapper of 2 children, suspected serial killer.
Yeah.
Currently serving 25 years to life in prison.
And they thought he was, just to get back to that, they thought he was involved with that Berkowitz cult. Because they didn't think this guy had the mental capacity to commit these crimes by himself.
How'd they make
But
that?
I don't believe he did. I don't believe he was involved with any cult.
Who claimed that he was involved?
I don't know if you call them conspiracy people, but they always say, because there was satanic stuff on those grounds, in those tunnels, there's all kinds of shit on the wall, and
What the fuck was happening in the 80s, man?
I don't know, man.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know. It was all new to me. I mean, I wasn't familiar with any of this stuff.
But you know what? Actually, what about because before you were explaining it, we brought it up because I thought you were going to bring it in that direction. But the whole case with Etan, where, as we now know, they told you lay off it and you had to leave it there. But that guy, Pedro Hernandez, did get arrested in 2012 and then was found guilty in 2017. And there's the reports on that are that this guy, he was like 51 or something when he got arrested and claimed that he was he worked at the bodega that was like right by where Etan was when he was 18 years old. And the claims were like members of his church, he lived in South Jersey, and members of his church said he had confessed to it in church. It was like this known thing. And then they ended up taking him, in on it, and they put him in jail for 25 to life. But you don't buy that guy did it.
I don't know. Honestly, I can't give you a definitive answer. I mean, by everyone's account, he's mentally incapacitated, really. Right?
Yeah.
Could he have devised that whole thing in his head and believed it himself and talked himself into thinking he did it? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They never found Etan's body. Was he sharp enough to actually hide the body good enough for it to, they were doing all kinds of searching for this kid.
At age 18 in Manhattan.
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I'm not knocking the work the detectives did. I'm not saying they railroaded this guy, because I'm sure that's not the case. The jury convicted him. But, am I 100% sure he did it? I'm not.
The satanic ritual thing is just like, That's going to stick with me. I know I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and look at that. I don't understand. I guess I just don't. I mean, I don't understand how you think like that at all, regardless of where you're from. But then the whole, like, when they talk about it in the context of powerful society, right? Like really rich people, like the elites.
Right. The blood drinking the blood.
The fuck are you doing?
Do you watch? Do you follow? Have you read any of that stuff? Do you see any of it?
Not really. Like I mean,
there were celebrities talking about drinking blood. Have you seen that recently?
Actually, I did. Okay. I know what one you're talking about with fucking. Megan Fox
and when you don't hear, when you don't hear about this stuff, or you don't like, if I didn't have a little bit of an intimate knowledge of it, you think it's so crazy. But then when you hear, and it's not only her. There were other celebrities, like well-known celebrities, who wear blood on their neck.
Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton.
Right.
And
even other ones that are on Ellen's show talking about how they do this stuff with blood to make themselves pretty and stuff.
Angie was, in fairness though, she was like very emo when she was a teenager, and then this was shortly after, and she like had a sexual revolution or whatever.
She was very what?
She was very emo. She was an emo kid when she was like 16. You know, like the fucking chainmail and all that stuff. So she was like, that was. I don't want to say that's like in someone's nature, but that wasn't.
But did you ever hear her? Did you ever hear the video of her?
No.
Oh man, I don't know how you could pull up. There's a video of her talking, and her friend apparently is recording her without her knowing. And she's talking about a ritual, and she's young. She's a lot younger.
Angelina Jolie drug video goes viral? No. Angelina Jolie Satanic ritual?
Yeah, maybe that'll get it.
I got nothing. But like they talk, I don't know what happens, right? Like with these groups, like, do you have a draft day? Is there a day where they're like, with the third pick in the fucking entertainers elites draft, we select?
See, the guys, the thing I think people don't get is, not you necessarily, just in general, you get drawn to the shit that you're into, man. Like, so like he likes like tiny like little kids. He found out this, somehow he gets contracted and he sees they're doing sex and drugs and crazy shit with kids maybe, and that's what draws him in. And then maybe he draws other people in, or maybe it's the drug aspect, So to me, it's not, I wish you could have found that. If you on your own one day, just check around and listen to it.
Yeah, when
she talks crazy stuff, man. It's on video, and her friend is actually hiding the recorder.
I'm gonna keep looking for that.
Yeah,
but it always comes back to this when we bring up this topic. But like looking at this whole Epstein thing,
right,
and all that. The older I get, the more I realize how many people are fucking pedophiles.
Right.
I can't believe I gotta say those words out loud. But do I think that the people online who run, the dark web conspiracy groups that claim that literally every single person who's ever done anything, like, do I believe? Absolutely not. That's insane, right? It's not. We're not talking even a majority at all here. But the fact that it's not two people.
Did you ever check out the Pentagon, the child porn on the Pentagon servers?
Come on,
bro. Supposedly they found more child porn on the Pentagon servers than they found on any servers.
Could there be
investigations going on?
No. Could there be an intelligence reason for that in active measures that they are taking to blackmail people who do that, and therefore it's on the servers?
Yeah, I think
that makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
Because like I know next time I have Andy Bustamante, the CIA guy, in, I think we're going to talk about this some more. We touched it last time, but he is very blunt about the world and how it works. And, there's certain things that he can't talk about. He's not legally allowed to. But from a broad level, he talks about pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And he has said, even on like Reddit forums when he does the AMAs through the company and everything, people have asked him directly, like, the people trying to get at the whole conspiracy theory about like child trafficking and stuff like that. And he's been open by not denying it and saying like, yes, there are things that are done in the interest of intelligence that prey on the worst weaknesses of society. And look, there's a part of me that's like, okay, you're trying to protect the free world and there's bad people out there and you need to get in with them before you take them down. Okay. But like, where is the line?
Right.
Like, it's a similar psychology on a way more serious scale than like, as the defense attorneys we were talking about earlier.
Right.
How do you compartmentalize that? Like, you have to be in that situation as a spy or something and be like, wow, there's a bunch of 12-year-olds being walked in there. And you can't go grab them. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.